Right, we are
Yep.
recording, and so this is the part 2 of the interview.
Right.
So, first time, you said that Mum had probably the most impact on you in terms of meeting.
Yeah.
So, tell us how you met.
Yeah, I was getting a bit thin on top, and I went to a clinic for that. Mum was one of the assistants there. That was it.
Right.
And yeah, just asked her out for a date, and same as I had
was your chat-up line, was it?
Sorry?
That was your chat-up line.
Yeah.
Okay, simple as that.
Yeah.
So she was swung by your natural good looks, apart from the hair, obviously.
Apart from the hair, yes. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Heard out, and that was it.
Okay, fair enough. So where did you go from there? How long did you date for before you moved in together?
Oh, quite a long time, because obviously I knew that she was married with 2 small boys, and well, it's a bit awkward, really. Sorry?
So what was your first house? What was your first house with Mum?
That would have been well, Northwestern Avenue for a short period, 142 Northwestern Avenue.
In what?
The house that I bought when I was married to Anne.
Right. Okay.
First proper house together would have been Alexandra Road.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned that like last time about your house growing up as well. So what was that like?
Well, I suppose very, very basic. Reform road. When I was born, it was an unmade road. In other words, it was just an earth track.
And this was in Tottenham, yeah?
In Tottenham, yes. Reform Row had a little kink in it. 15 houses, that's all terraced. 2 up, 2 down, 1 round the back. In other words, 2 rooms downstairs, 2 rooms upstairs, 2 bedrooms, and no outside toilet, obviously. No bathroom. Lighting was by gas, and I do remember, I must have been quite small at the time, but hearing the pop from the gas when my dad would need to strike a match to the filament to get the gas to come on, and then you adjusted it to get the light up, and that was it. So the only heating in the house was a small coal fire. That was it. No facilities, no hot water, nothing.
So bathing was what, tin bath in the front room?
Yeah.
Or? Right.
Yeah. Well, I do sometimes I went to the Tottenham baths where they had council baths. They were really good, and you just shouted out more hot or more cold, and
right,
the water came through.
Yeah.
But yeah, everyone was in the same, so I was no worse off than anyone else in the road. No one had a bathroom or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you have friends who lived in the same road?
Yes, of course. Yeah. The one really good friend, Roy Cumming, I became his best man, and he became my best man. Although he did try to talk some sense into me about Anne, which naturally I ignored to my cost. But yeah, Roy lived in the same road as well.
Yeah. I seem to remember you telling me that there was someone in the road that you saw years later.
Well, the 3 of us were fairly good friends. One of them, a chap called Bert Regan, still lives in the same house now because I saw him a few years ago, and it was a strange situation, always strange with him. He was quite intelligent, played violin, but as a small boy, I remember him saying to me, "Look at my thumbs, Clive. I've got murderer's thumbs." And it just so happens, and the only people I've told about this has been Amy and Mum. He did become a murderer. It was terrible. By that time, I was in the RAF, and when I came home, I was going to see my girlfriend and my other friends, obviously, and I went round to see this chap called. And his mother opened the door, and she looked really, really terrible and had been crying, but she only opened it halfway. And she said, "Yes, what do you want?" So I said, "Oh, I only called to see Bert." Here he was. And she said, "Oh, he's away, he's on a course," and shut the door. So I went round to see my other friend, Roy. He was out, and I told his mother what had happened. And she said, "I think I better tell you, as you were all friends." And she showed me a load of newspaper articles, all of which were quite lurid. One of them was "Killer for a Kiss." And apparently he worked for a cigarettes company. He was doing some scientific work. And the girl was a cleaner, and she was married and pregnant, which is even worse. And it seems, according to the article, that he asked her for a kiss, and she quite understandably said no. And then something must have clicked in him, because he killed her. It was as simple as that. And it came as a hell of a shock to me for obvious reasons, especially bearing in mind what had happened earlier on. And I suppose he wasn't a bad looking bloke. I would have thought he would have got girlfriends quite easily, but he didn't, because when we went out to dances, it was always me that got the girl and the others didn't. So I don't know why. He was in the Navy for a short period. It was national service, but then he was dismissed. But no one knows why he was dismissed, but he was, and it could have been for a whole multitude of reasons. When I was in the RAF, I had a particular girlfriend called Doreen Wing. She was Miss Edmonton, really good looking. And one weekend I couldn't get home, so she went to the dance and Bert was there. At the end of the dance, Bert said, could he take her home? So she said, no, but you can take me as far as the bus stop. So apparently walked with her as far as the bus stop. And then he tried to kiss her. And she said, no, she said, I'm Clive's girlfriend. And she's telling me this, another weekend. And she said, I couldn't believe it. He started to cry, because she wouldn't kiss him. I mean, why any girl would want to kiss a bloke like that, I've no idea. But I didn't mention it to him, for it would have been embarrassing. But anyway, obviously he served his time. And I did call to see him many years later, wondering if he was still at the same house. He had two brothers, quite normal sort of brothers, and he was there. They'd given him the house, so he still lived in the same house. And when I called, he said, I said, oh, but he said, yes. He said, who are you? Obviously he didn't recognise me. So I said, Clive. And he said, Clive? Clive who? And I told him. Oh, he said, oh, you better come in. And we went in, and I said, look, I already know what happened. Yeah. And but it was a really, really, really strange situation.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen him since, I must admit.
No.
But it was really, really odd. Really odd.
You must have some good memories from growing up there as well. I mean,
yeah, of course.
What was Christmas like?
Well, we made our own decorations,
right.
Paper canes all up to the centre light, and we did it all ourselves. We relied on Dad for the Christmas chicken, he had to win the bagatelle competition, but we knew he'd win anyway, which he duly did. So we had a chicken for Christmas. That was the big thing.
Yeah. So what sort of presents did you get, and what did you ask for? What did you want, and what did you get?
Well, they asked me what I would like for Christmas. I must be honest, I didn't want to ask for anything because I know my dad didn't earn a lot of money and mum didn't work. But I did want a game called Escalado, a racing game, which they did have, and I think it cost 2 and 6pence, which seemed a hell of a lot of money. And anyway, that was in my that was my Christmas present.
Yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, how do you?
I didn't have many toys, if that's what you're going to ask me.
No, I was, yeah. Well, that was the question really, yeah. And you know, you see the kind of games that kids play these days. What do you think about those?
Ah, well, why not? That's okay. Yeah, just change your life. Life's different in other ways. When we spoke about music before, tastes change, obviously, and that's just a way of life. Yeah. My mum and dad had a favourite radio programme called Sing Something Simple. I think it was 4 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, and it was a chorus. And I remember the jingle line. It went, "Sing something simple as time goes by. Sing something simple, just you and I."
Yeah, I can understand why you didn't like it.
Yeah, quite. I'll sing the old songs and you will sing the new. I'll sing something simple to you. And of course, I thought it was bloody awful what it was. I didn't sing anything new anyway. It was things like Daisy, Daisy and things of that nature. But
was there anything that you thought would never catch on, but became really big?
Skiffle, Lonnie Donegan. I think I had a little go on that with a washboard and drumming out the side, and I don't think it didn't catch on as much as I thought it would.
Yeah, what about the other way around though? Anything that's still big today that you didn't think would catch on?
I thought not just music, you mean?
I know anything.
No, I can't think of anything in that respect particularly. Sorry. Yeah.
No, fair enough. What about travel? So when was the first time that you went abroad?
When I was in the forces.
Right. Where was that to?
Belgium.
Right.
I was already running a book because he couldn't have afforded to go abroad on national service pay.
Right.
Although I did get a big prize when I got up to corporal. Yes, went to Belgium. That was good.
You said you were running a book. Could you explain what that means?
Yeah, bookmaker. I think I explained to you before about my first job with Dickinson's. I was there for 18 months. But then when I was 17 and a half, I was called into the office with another young chap to told that our services were no longer required.
This was Dickinson's, the paper mill.
Yeah, John Dickens. Yeah. John Dickinson's, Basildon Bond. And I just got a job with the local bookmaker, William Gibson, and 3 times as much as I did with Dickinson's. And so when I was in the RAF, when I got back onto a permanent station, I ran a book.
Which I assume wasn't strictly allowed.
Yeah, of course not. But, I mean, I justified it to myself because the blokes used to bet with a local bookmaker in Bedford. And so when I said, I'll run take your bets for you and pay you out the full amount, because a lot of people used to pay out, they were called 5/8 bookmakers. That means they paid them out less than half the right amount. Well, I always paid out the full amount. And I used to have runners. At Cardington, we had civilians working there as well. And I had civilians working for me unofficially, obviously. And I used to pay them a commission between a shilling and 1 and 6pence in the pound. That's 5 to 7.5% on the bets they gave me. And the real boost came when the sergeant gave us a shilling each way treble, and they all won. And he said, "Oh, when do I collect my money?" So I said, "Oh, tomorrow morning at naffy break, Sarge." And it came to £5.19 shillings and 6pence, which was an enormous amount for a 2-bob bet. And I remember I counted out all the money in £1 notes, 1, 2, up to 5, and then 10-shilling note. And he said, "Well," he said, "that's the full amount." So I said, "Yeah, of course it's the full amount, Sarge. Everybody gets the full amount." And all the blokes had gathered round. And
this is in front of everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Naturally, yeah. I timed it. And I've always been fairly astute that way. My takings trebled. But I was able to dissuade them for betting more than they could afford to lose. That was my thing there. Although ultimately I did get caught. My first officer, a chap called Plisky, which is unusual for me remembering. He was a really keen young chap, very fit. And when I got promoted, he said, "Well done, Corporal." He said, "You could make a full-time life here in the Royal Air Force." And he was dead keen, a little chap with a handlebar moustache. And ultimately, he was replaced. I got on really well with him, with a chap who was a real swine. He was a National Service officer, which is very, very unusual. His father was a bishop, and he called me into the office. I went in to see him, gave him a salute, and he said, "Do you know gambling is a sin, Corporal?" So I said, "Well, depends which way you look at it, sir." And he said, "Don't be frivolous to me. I'm your commanding officer." And he pulling rank outrageously. And he said, "All this has got to stop." And he said, "You've got to stop these men playing silly games." I used to, in a break, I used to let the men play tuppenny halfpenny football. It was quite innocent. We didn't bet on it. And he said, "No doubt," he said, "you're wagering money on this." So I said, "No, as a matter of fact, not. We just played it for a game." And I played it with a previous officer who wanted to explain to me the game. And he called me into his office and I explained to him how we played the game. And he enjoyed it. He said, "Don't tell any of the men about this, will you, Corporal?" So I said, "No, sir." And I didn't. But this chap was a real shocker. And he said, "Right," he said, "that's all got to stop." And gave us a dressing round about the evils of gambling and so on. But then one day he turned up at the billet, in our off time, which was unusual. Well, it's just not done. And he came along with a bike and his briefcase, and left the bike and the briefcase out while he came in to see me. And then he went outside, and someone, I knew who it was, obviously, had stolen both his bike and his briefcase. And he came back in and told me the situation. I said, "Oh, that's terrible, sir." He said, "Well, go and organise a search party." "Yes, sir." I said, "Right, Smith, Brown, go and have a look for the officer's briefcase and bike." And we made out songs about it afterwards, about who sold the briefcase. He was absolutely furious. So he said, "Right, it's not going to end here." And he went up to see the military police at the far end of the station and came back, of course, in the meantime, naturally enough. Would you believe it? His bike and his briefcase had reappeared. And the Snowdrops, they knew who he was, obviously. And he came in with them. And they said, "Is this your briefcase and bicycle, sir?" "This is the Snowdrops." And they said, "Yes."
The Snowdrops are the military police, is that right?
Yeah, called Snowdrops because they wore a white on their cap. Yeah. And that was it. So obviously he'd been made a fool of, and he was furious from then onwards. Ultimately, when I got posted to Gloucester, it was he who did it. He didn't have the guts to tell me, but definitely he arranged for the posting. He just didn't like it that I'd carried on in my evil ways.
Yeah.
At that time, I also used to sell watches. Someone I knew in Tottenham could get hold of a watch for £1, and I could sell it for £1.10. And then Dick Brunton, we used to sell chocolate to the recruits. And by that time I was a corporal, we were going to the recruits. I said, come and get your chocolate. I remember one bloke, all recruits remember. He said, well, we can get these in the nappy, can't we? And I said, yes, you can. And I showed him for 2 stripes. He said, but you want to get them here, don't you?
So you were full rank.
Full rank. Yeah, incidentally, when I was promoted to corporal, I was really surprised. I was told by the station warrant officer to wear my number 1 blue and see the officer commanding of the station. That was all. Just, I thought, what do you want to see me for? And I thought, crikey, he's found out I'm running a book. But it wasn't that at all. He called me in and he said, I've had very good reports from you, Airman, from your officer, Pilot Officer Kliski. And he said, I want to make you one of my officers. Would you accept the responsibility? And thinking of the extra money that we were bringing in was quite substantial. I said, yes, sir. He said, well, I know you're very popular with all of the men. He said, but you must not allow them to call you by your Christian name now. They must call you Corporal. He said, do you understand? So I said, yes, sir, I had no intention of keeping that. And he said, well, normally when you're promoted, we post you because we realise you can be in an awkward position with people you knew beforehand and you being popular. And he said, but we need you here. And that was it. Then when I was actually posted to Gloucester, there was a really big parade, and this was an important one. In Gloucester, there were 2 camps. One was Barnwood and one was Innsmouth. It's where all the RAF records are kept. We were billeted in a Barnwood and then we marched into Innsmouth. But I'd only been there for 3 days, and on the PORs, that's called personal occurrence reports, given out to all officers, and I had mine. And my orders were to assemble my flight of 28 men. I knew none of them because I'd only been there 3 days, outside my billet at 0700 hours. So I'm to wait for the flight sergeant to take command. We were to be given a new set of colours, and the Air Vice Marshal of the Royal Air Force was coming to the station for the ceremony. A big platform was built up in Gloucester. I remember we were in Barnwood. So I assembled all my men at 7 o'clock or 7 a.m. No flight sergeant. So I did an open order march and inspected the men, not my job. And then I did a roll call, not my job, that should be the sergeant's job. And people were then started, I could hear them talking in the ranks. We were supposed to be on parade at the other camp in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So I felt I was losing command at that time, I admit it. And I said, right, quiet, no talking in the ranks. Answer when your name's called. I called out the first chap's name, Brown, and chap came to attention, which is what you have to do. Came to attention, called out, Sergeant. And of course, that gave me my opportunity then. I marched up to him. He was a great big tall chap, about 6'3", I should think. And I said, how many stripes do you see, Airman? And he said, the poor chap was obviously quite flustered because he said, 2, sir. 2, sir? Don't call me sir. I'm not a bloody commissioned officer. I nearly said to him, what am I? But I thought I'd better think of that again. I said, Right, we'll start again, shall we? Stand at ease. Stand. And then I called his name, and he came to attention. This time he called out, Corporal. That's better. And then I went along and did all the rest as well, and they all came to attention and called out the right thing. But now, of course, I was really beginning to worry because the time was running low and this big parade was going to be going on. The worst thing is, I didn't know where the square was in Innsmouth. I'd only been there, but I thought, well, the band will be, oh, they had the Royal Air Force Band, not our ordinary band. So I then decided you might ask yourself there, what would you do in these circumstances? Because in the forces, orders have to be obeyed. And my orders was quite specific. And the orders were to assemble my flight at the said hour at that time, which I did. What would you have done?
Well,
come on, quick.
Followed orders, I guess. If the sergeant hasn't turned up, then you've done your bit. But I guess I can imagine you probably just tried to take some initiative. Yeah,
you do. Yeah, because that is it. Yeah, you do have to take the initiative. And I decided that I'd take them over there myself. The worst thing is I didn't know where it was. I knew I had to cross a road. So, and we're all in full kit. All our belts are blancoed and bayonets and all that business and so on. And so March and I did a halt of the road. It's now a dual carriageway, but I halted the flight at the road, marched out in the middle and stopped the traffic. I think it was 2 cars and a milk float, and marched them across. But now we're running really behind time because I'm just marching along. So I called out halt again, and then I gave the next 2 orders, really got them on worried, because I said port arms, because you can't, when you've got a rifle on your shoulder, you can't run with it on your shoulder, so you have to port arms, have it in front like that, and you don't run, it's called double. So then I gave the next order, which was on the double, and then do you know what doubling is?
I assume running.
Well, it's not running. It is in a way. It's like running in time.
Right. Okay.
In other words, you're doing up, down, like that, and with the rifle in front.
Mm.
Right. So it's not easy to do, especially if you haven't done it for a long while, which they clearly hadn't. In other words, it was complete and utter shambles. So I let them go about 200 or 300 yards, and then I had to stop them because they were all over the place. And I told them, in colourful language, what a shambles they were. So I was now back in control. And I thought, oh, I have to march. By this time, I could hear the sound of the band, so I knew which way to head. In other words, I was following the music. So I got them back, and I remember an ordinary quick march following the sound of the music. As we were going along, I then heard running footsteps behind me, and it was the sergeant who came running up at the double and out of breath as well. And he says, oh, thanks, Corporal. He said, I'll take command now. What had actually happened, I know, obviously, by this time, I'll be honest, I could see, inside of the square now, the whole station was there with all this big dais in front and so on. And I thought, pardon?
Apart from you lot?
Apart from my lot, yeah. All the rest of the station was there. I suppose it must have been 800 men, I suppose. And I could feel the sweat running down my neck because I didn't know where I was on my orders were just as I told you. So I didn't know where on the square rather, I was to be. Only the sergeant knew that. But fortunately, as he did turn up, what had actually happened, he lost his stripes. He'd smuggled a girl. Whether it was his girlfriend, I suppose it was. He smuggled a girl into the sergeant's quarters the night before, and that was why he was late on parade. There was an upshoot, obviously, because I don't know whether it was a court-martial or not. It was certainly a serious charge, because I had to appear as the principal witness, and there was a big desk with all the officers and the CR in front. And maybe it was a court-martial because he lost his stripes. one was posted. That's just the way how the RAF did things. And I was called in, name, rank and number. I marched in between two military policemen on the double. And the charging officer said to me then, "What were your orders, Corporal?" And I told him what they were. And I told him what I'd done. And I just gave the simple facts, really. Yeah. But as I say, he lost his stripes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously from running the book and, you know, selling watches and chocolate and all those kind of things. I mean, obviously you sold a lot of things, and you ran a lot of I wouldn't say scams, but you ran a lot of you sold a lot of things and did business. If you were to give some advice to, say, a young adult who perhaps wasn't sure what direction they were going in, or what sort of advice would you give a young adult?
Well, I didn't do it. I don't think I did anything dishonest. So I would say yes. Be honest.
It's good advice.
If you're honest,
can't go wrong.
No. Yeah, but take up. I mean, life in the forces, especially with long service men, they become institutionalized, and it's a pretty boring life actually, unless you do something. If you've got an active mind, I wouldn't say long-time military service is a good idea. No. It's not for. It's all right in a lot of respects. As I said, I think it's the worst thing the country ever did when they did away with national service. I really do.
So it's good for a short time, basically.
I think personally.
For some people.
I think for everybody. Discipline is important. And this is an old man talking, I know, but there is a lack of discipline now. There's no question about that. Authority isn't respected, which in the forces it has to be. I mean, personally, other than that one occasion, I don't think I ever pulled rank. I never put anyone on charge, actually. Oh yes, unless I was instructed to do so.
Yeah.
But I didn't put anyone on charge myself. My thing was, if you can't deal with a situation yourself, why should you pass it for someone else to deal with? That was my rationale, if you like.
So, be honest, take responsibility.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, let's we'll finish up there for the second one, and maybe do a third.
Good. Okay.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Okay then. Bye now.
Bye.